Okay, now you may want to do, a lot of people like to do binding, and they like to bind their fingerboards. And binding fingerboards can be problematic, especially when you go to fret. Plastic, sometimes wood, as you're hammering the frets in, will want to break, and it'll just come right off. So you can solve that problem by creating yourself a little jig. You can see it's very simple. All I did was hammer this together, following the taper of this fingerboard. I also have one here. This is a 1 3/4, 2 1/4 board. This is for 1 11/16, 2 1/8, but it's very simple to make. Okay, so now what can I do here? The first thing that I like to do is dry fit. I dry fit all of my joints first. So I can mark here, leaving myself some trim, and I'm just going to cut these off. The wood that I'm using is sycamore. And I'm using sycamore. I like sycamore because it has this wonderful, very nice pattern to it, and it will vary anywhere from speckled to tiger stripe to whatever you want to call it. It's just a very pretty piece of wood. So let's set this up, and this is how I do a fingerboard bound in wood. Now you're going to see me put a piece here and another piece here. That's there for a reason. That allows me to manipulate this up and down, and I can take a look to see how tight I am, where I need to be tighter, and do I have to make something a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner. So right now you can see by using the wedge I can actually work this pretty well, and that's going to be pretty good. Now I'm happy with that. Alright, now I got to make my joints. So how do you make your joints? And don't tell me zigzag papers. So now I can cut these off, and you're going to see me make a miter. Now you can do any kind of binding you want. If you want to do a thin white black against this, you're easily to do so, and you can make your binding in one piece. It's a lot easier than doing 4 or 5 together. In fact, when I do pearl, I'll run this through my sander to the thickness of my pearl, and I'll drop it in there. So I'll do the pearl right on top of this and glue it together so it's one piece, because making one piece fit is a lot easier than making more than one. So and you're saying, well, don't you have to cut these with a miter saw? Or actually you don't, and I'll show you why you don't. So that one's locked in, this one is locked in. Now I'm going to cut across here, and I'm going to use that piece right there. So now all I have to do, I'm going to start with the miter on this side. Now Glenn can zoom in close here, and you can see that my miter is open right here. So all I have to do, since I know that is open, I have to take off at this end. So to be very precise in how you control your miter cut, use your block. I know I need to take a little bit off, and you see I'm doing a circular pattern. Okay, let me do it over here. In fact, this would be better. Let's do it this way. So you're going to see me do a circular pattern, very lightly. test fit. And now you can see it's almost there, but I overcorrected, so I have to go the other way. And you can be very precise in how you do this, just by how you put it on the block. You got the visual of how much of a gap you had. Voila. Now I can cut this side, and I can just cut it right off. I'm going to give myself a little bit of room, just a little, and I'm going to overcut it and then sand this to the line. Now what I've done, you can see I have my pencil mark there, and I've taken the inside of my miter line to that outside pencil mark. Now I can get this in here and I can see where the outside portion of this is, and right there it is. So now I'm going to square this off, and you can see how quick this works. Put that in there, and I can see just a hair more. And now I'm going to set up my miter. And I'm just eyeballing my 45. Now this little squaring block is something that I've had since my machinist days. And you can be very, very precise. And I can tell that my joints look nice and tight, but you see how I'm pulling off there. So I know I have to adjust length. The miter's good, the length is bad. So there I can just eyeball my angle and just take a little. And you can see we're getting closer. We're getting closer. And this is a case where you want to take your time. After all, measure twice, cut once, and repeat. So now you can see, Glenn should be able to zoom in there, and you can see that my miters are nice and snug. Okay? So, what's the next step? 1, 2, 3. The next step is we're going to glue this up. And we're going to use two things. Wax paper and glue. Now what glue you want to use, I don't care. You can use fish glue, Type Bond, super glue. It doesn't matter. Since you aren't going to be staining this wood, you could indeed use super glue. So now I'm going to drop this in here. I need a little piece up there. Make it longer. Now, like I said, I could use super glue. I can use damn near anything I want. Now, this end's a little tricky because, as you can see, there's no way to lock that in. You can make a little wedge for down here. You can do almost anything. This is my favorite method of doing the tail part. Piece of tape and another piece of tape. Alright? So this is going to go in here. That's going to go in here. And whether you use wood or super glue, like I said, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to dry fit this all together, real nice and neat. And see, now I can pull my tape right up. Okay. Be a little thin. Alright. Now I can just tap this all down. Now if you're going to use super glue, you want to be careful. You don't want to flood your slot. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the miters. That way I know my miters are nice and tight. And I like to use the thin, it's super thin CA. And really, it just follows, it wicks in so nicely. And I'm just going to put a little drop here. I'm just putting drops, you see that? I'm not putting a lot. And the super glue just wicks into the tight parts. You do want to be careful. After all, you don't want to become part of the fingerboard. And you can just see how that wicks and follows that crack so nicely. If I put too much CA on there, it'll flood into my slots, and that I don't want. And it doesn't take terribly long. I mean, a few minutes. I can see that my super glue is cured. Tap it out of the wedge. I'm just going to follow that along that line. And I don't want to flood it. I just want to let it wick in. You see how that's just following itself in? For you plumbers out there, it's like when you're doing solder. It'll just flow right into the joint. Now in case there is a video I have on a quick tip on how to make these little pipettes. I use a little match, and then I can actually stretch them and pull the ends so I can be very, very precise in how I lay my glue down. So, this does not take terribly long. I can take this off. Hit this with the activator, which I should have done before I put it away. So you can see that's fixed already. I mean, we haven't, this is actual time. Now I'm going to trim this off. How do you sand one of these on a bench without it wiggling all over the place? Well, I have found the easiest way to do this is with tape. I want to sand the radius on this fingerboard. And you can put screws and stops, you can do almost anything. If you don't want to put screws into your top of your workbench, take a piece of tape and just fold it over. Lay that right on there like that. Now, that's ready to go to work. Now I can take my sanding block, and you notice I'm going on and off. I'm not standing like that. I'm going on and off, all the way up. And I'm watching my surface. I can actually see the sandpaper on the surface, and we're almost done radiusing this board. And final touch. From my shop to yours. That's how you fingerboard or bind a fingerboard. That's how you fingerboard a bind, right? That's how you bind a fingerboard. Thanks again. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.